Our top story this morning, President Park Geun-hye heads on an 8-day trip to Russia, China and Laos. On this Friday, the economy and security will be the focal point of discussions at the multilateral summits and her one-on-ones with other world leaders. Our presidential office correspondent Song Ji-son starts us off.
President Park's trip begins in Vladivostok, where she'll attend the Eastern Economic Forum. Park will deliver a speech as the guest of honor at the event hosted by Russian President Vladimir Putin, aimed at fostering development and growth in the Far East. Seeking to jointly counter North Korea's growing nuclear threat will be one item on the agenda during bilateral talks with Putin. At her next stop, the G20 in Hangzhou, China, she'll hold a sideline summit with the president of the host country, Xi Jinping. President Park will likely call on Beijing to play a greater role in pressuring Pyongyang on its nuclear ambitions and try to bring China closer to Seoul's position on the deployment of the U.S. THAAD missile defense system to counter those threats.
The presidential visit is aimed at boosting the potential for economic growth while strengthening cooperation with the international community in denuclearizing North Korea by implementing UN Security Council resolutions.
A series of bilateral talks with Saudi Arabia, Egypt and Italy is also scheduled during the G20 summit. At this year's meeting, where inclusive growth is the key phrase, Park will promote Seoul's innovation drive as a new model for global growth.
President Park will propose Seoul's creative economy as a model for an innovative, inclusive economy to contribute to the G20's future growth, while also calling for a greater role for the member countries in promoting free trade against recent protectionism.
At her last stop, the ASEAN Summit in Vientiane, Laos, Park will seek to lay the foundations for greater trade and investment with the massive economic bloc. President Park will sit down with U.S. President Barack Obama, while talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe are also being arranged. In a series of bilateral and multilateral summits, President Park will repeat her call for world leaders to guide Pyongyang to the right choice by sending a strong message for the implementation of international sanctions. Song Ji-son, Arirang News.